Hey everybody, it's Z here with Six Pack Productions, and this is the start of what might turn out to be an absolutely terrible mistake as I attempt to make 30 videos in 30 days all throughout the month of April. And this first one is going to be on a topic that isn't that new, but has regained a little bit of momentum on the internet in the last week or so, and that is the 80-20 rule of dating. For those unfamiliar, I will link a chart in the description to the video, but it started with a study coming out from OkCupid, which is one of the most popular, if not the most popular, dating website and app in the world. It's something that I myself haven't used in several years, but hey, I did back in the day with relative success before Tinder took the whole concept of swiping and just escalated things to a point of absurdity that I'll talk more in depth about later on. But the key aspect of the data they were releasing of who was joining, who was using it, which type of people tended to message others, mostly just to make some interesting conversation. Unfortunately, two graphs that they revealed kind of set the internet on fire to the point where the website actually took the references down because they thought you could delete things off the internet permanently. Whatever. The charts were very simple in their concepts. It was a general chart of how men on the site who were interested in women rated the women they found on the site, and then the reverse, how the women who were interested in men found the men, and this is all just in terms of attractiveness, how they rated each other. It wasn't about who answered messages or met up. This was just about knee-jerk reactions, basically, to seeing a picture, because for those who have never used the website, while you can browse profiles and opt to send messages, you can provide a decent amount of information that a person, you can provide a good amount to work with for someone who wants to read, but you can also take the Tinder style route of just get a picture, click 1 to 5 stars, and move on to the next one, and do that a bunch of times. And the website supposedly tries to match you up with individuals who are similar to those you rate highly. I don't know how well that actually works. But what the charts revealed was pretty staggering. Uh, for men, their ratings of women was actually almost a perfect example of a bell curve. I mean, if you had to teach a class on statistics, you could probably use that as an example of a standard distribution. Uh, they broke it down into 7 tiers from most to least attractive. So in this case, a 4 out of 7 would be average. And for the men, it was like 5%, 4 or 5% for both most and least, 1 and 7, respectively. And then as you moved towards the middle, that percentage would gradually grow. So 4 had the most, and then as you went in the other direction, it would start to peter off until it dipped down again. So it it made sense. Most people are average. Uh, a handful are above or below average, and then a select few are really attractive or really unattractive. Makes sense. But for how the women rated the men, it looked like the start of a freaking roller coaster because the bottom ratings, everything below average, hovered between 25 and 30% before it plummeted like the first giant fall on that roller coaster. And with the OkCupid data, it found that only 12% of men received enough ratings that they would be average to the women using the site. 12%. 5% were a step above that. 2% were the next step up. And 0% showed at the most attractive level. So not even enough to register a blip on the damn radar. Now, some studies have been done on other websites and apps, and weirdly enough, this number kind of tends to continue. It's relatively constant. It hovers around 20% of men being considered average or above. It's not exactly that. The OkCupid comes out to 19%. There's a little bit of deviation, but not enough to think that there's anything weird going on in a given year or on a given website or app. This is just how it is. Apparently, uh, this is something that's come up again when a study was released and actually published in the Mary Sue. That's where a lot of people decided to go into this. But it's not the first. A few studies now have come out in the past year to 18 months showing that the current generation of young adults from the ages of 18 to 30 are having far less sex and having far fewer partners than previous generations, uh, by as much as 2/3 uh, from some numbers. So, despite some individuals, generally more right on the political spectrum, talking about the decay of morality, well, if morality is decaying, then not a lot of people are actually taking the fucking advantage of it. And it, to some, boggles the mind. Why is this happening? Tim Pool, whom I watch a fair amount of his content, recently looked at this and hypothesized that women were going mostly for older men, and that the current generation, for a number of reasons, weren't getting the amount of attention that they normally would, and that they would have to wait until much longer. And that relates to things like the fact that fewer men are going to college, the fact that those who do have to deal with significantly higher student debt, the reality that perhaps women tend to skew a bit older, and thus of the 18 to 30 range, those who are towards the higher end will want to date men that are in their mid to late 30s. And that might account for some of it, but the other possibility is that based on this data, while overall guys are hooking up way less and dating less and getting laid less, those at the top of the dog pile are just getting way more. And so we're not seeing a relatively standard spread of access across men in this age group. And I happen to be in the upper end of that range. And man, it can scare the shit out of you sometimes to come to the possibility that if you aren't the, so to speak, cream of the crop, that you could easily get left behind. Now, this 80-20 rule comes up in a lot of different contexts, but I wanted to approach it from two sides, because it's one thing to gather some data, some empirical evidence, and be able to come to a reasonable conclusion, but it's another matter entirely to A, look at possible flaws in the data, and B, apply a solution or at least a reaction to it. Uh, I'm an economist by trade. I can geek out about numbers at length, but anytime that someone's running a good analysis of statistics, a good statistician, a good economist, a good mathematician will tell you at the end, okay, is there a chance it's wrong? Is there a chance that the information we have could be flawed or at least could be made more accurate? Maybe this is the best way we have, but there maybe are alternative methods that could be explored in future research. And if this is the best info we have, what do we do with it? Because if you're just going to sit there and say, okay, only 20% of men, give or take, are considered attractive, and you don't react at all, and you just bring it up, then there was no point to even reading the research if you're not going to look at the world a little bit differently and try and fix a possible issue. So let's talk about problems with the data and also problems with the interpretation that I found in watching a lot of content and consuming a lot of content online that does talk about it. So number one is to the guys out there that get a little depressed and hang up on this rule a bit too much. It's top 20%. It's not top 1%. And that's something that I feel like a lot of people are missing. Particularly, look, I'm in the US. Presumably, most people who are watching this will also be in the US. And we're a good 20 years deep into an obesity epidemic that we have now reached a point of 2/3 of Americans being medically overweight, and about 35%, give or take, when I last checked, would be medically obese. I mean, if we make what I think is a fairly safe assumption that that's split relatively evenly between men and women, then hell, just not being fat will put you in the top third in terms of physical fitness. Now, you're already making some progress there. Similarly, depending on where you are in the country, you can pretty easily find the median income for men in your area. And for most of the country, that's going to fall somewhere between 30 and 50,000. To go further in either direction is to either be in a very wealthy part of the country, which, let's be honest, there aren't too many, or a very poor part of the country, which, again, there aren't that many. And the median is the 50% mark. It's the line at which we can go, okay, here's the point. Let's say it's 40,000 for the sake of argument. Half the men make less than 40, and half the men make more than 40. Or whatever percentage needs to split it up. So that the exact middle, if you lined up everybody's income, would be at that 40,000. So again, you figure it out, you find a way to make a little bit more than that, and you're suddenly in the top third for income. Now you're in the top third for income from that. You're in the top third of fitness because you lost a little bit of weight and you hit the gym. And guess what? That probably puts you in the top 25 to 30, and you're well on your damn way to being better off. By the way, we can even mitigate this by pointing out that you're not competing with 20% of men in the entire country. You know, if I am going out, if I'm in, let's say, I don't want to dox myself here, let's say I'm in Oklahoma City. If I'm in Oklahoma City, I am not competing with people in LA. I'm not competing with people in Chicago or DC. I'm not competing with people in Montana or Texas or Nevada or Maine. I'm competing with people in my city, state, and hell, in a given context, I might only be competing with people in the bar where I happen to be or the store where I'm walking around. So let's ease up with the attitude of, well, women only want guys who are millionaires with six-pack abs, who are famous and can be recognized throughout most of the world. It's not that bad. You know, the reason I cite those couple statistics and ways to look up statistics is to let you know that 20% basically just means successful. And success can take time. And I'm not suggesting it'll be easy or that you need to be able to do it the moment you get a high school degree. But it's a lot closer than you think. So please don't despair. That's ultimately what I want to do with a lot of these videos this month, is give you the idea that, hey, if you want to get this, you can put a little bit of work into it. Don't fall into the hole of, well, everything's screwed, there's no reason for me to try, and everybody sucks. Because then you're just going to be miserable. And yeah, being miserable is easy because you don't have to do anything, but I want to kind of recommend you maybe look in another direction. So that's my issue with the interpretation of the data. And in terms of the data itself, well, look, these are people giving their opinions of total strangers, possibly in the privacy of their own home, with these apps and websites, or at least in a way where the women don't have to worry about somebody influencing their opinion. So you'd think that would make it the most objective possible truth for them, and thus the most reliable data, right? Completely wrong. Absolutely wrong. This is basically survey data, and surveys are the worst way to gather information for any sort of legitimate research. Anytime somebody uses a study to research a particular topic, it's just because they didn't have the time or the means and other resources to get better, more reliable data. And the big reason in this one is, when you ask somebody point blank, In fact, I should narrow this down. Women judge men on a curve. We are judged in relation to each other. Guys, we're not like that. In terms of attractiveness, we are judging women. Yes, no, let me have a few shots first. That's really it. No matter how you rate women on a scale of 1 to 10, how many beers, 1 to 5 stars, however you're doing it, we can really just kind of break it down to yes, no, maybe, and really simplify matters. At least that's been my experience. Because what men find attractive in women is pretty easy to figure out. While there's definitely variance in tastes, and there are some weird fetishes out there, just, yeah. But generally speaking, the stuff we're looking for relates to health, fitness, and fertility, and it pretty much all boils down to looks. So you can identify the criteria really easily. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way with women, and this is where we end up making the mistakes with gathering data is we each gender assumes the other is looking at things the same way they do. They don't consider that the other side just doesn't see the world the same way in this matter. See, women, and look, I don't need to tell you what hypergamy is. If you found my channel, you probably watched 10 others and you know what it is. Short version for those who are new, women are attracted to men for their ability to elevate her in a socioeconomic ladder, whether that's providing money or other resources, or just elevating her social standing due to his existing status in the society. That's what she wants. That means that her biological drive is to be with the best guy she can. And the only way something can be the best is if you can compare it to other things that you then deem worse. Okay? If you're in the bottom 80, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you're ugly. It certainly doesn't mean that you can't work your way up. It just means that when a girl is clicking through OkCupid or swiping through Tinder, every guy she looks at is going to be met with, could the next guy boost me further? If so, I don't want to screw up my chances with him by hooking up with this dude. And she will say no and move on. But if you were to take a lot of these women and put them in a party, and one of those guys that she said no to was to start a conversation and to engage with her not just on this very very calculating, how do I maximize my resource obtaining, and he had a little bit of game going for him. Yeah, what you might call punching out of his weight class is really just taking advantage of the fact that no, hypergamy is not gravity. It's not this unstoppable force that there's no solution to addressing, to handling, and of fighting through. This is not how it is. Then, on top of that, and this might be even more important regarding how the data is collected, is that it's just based on ratings. It's not based on who answers messages. It's not based on who actually responds to an attempt to contact. And it's certainly not based on who actually goes out on dates or gets any further along, which means that we don't know who's actually having success with it. And that's just with the app. That's not even counting other means of meeting people that I would definitely recommend over this stuff, because again, when you put someone in that position where they have the potential to see 1,000 people in a couple days, they're basically going to get a fear of missing out. So yeah, Tinder sucks, OkCupid sucks, anything else that relates to those sucks. Don't bother with them. Delete them all from your phone. Never go to the website. Skip it all. But don't fall into the nihilistic pit of, well, no, 80% of women are going after 20% of men, so I'm not going to bother because I'm just an average Joe. No, 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 no. In the society we live in, most people are fat and lazy. Let's be real. Most of them don't get anywhere in life because it's easier to put forth zero effort than the decent amount that it takes to move up. Give it a try. And to those, talk about this, it actually was in a previous video, to the like incel and MGTOW types that just say, oh, well, if you're gonna try, then you're just simping, you're just kowtowing to women. Being successful, having money, and good physical fitness have a ton of benefits besides just getting more attention from women. And in my opinion, if you're doing something that is a clear, rational, good decision and you take action on it, I don't really care what your motivation is as long as you just keep doing things that make perfect sense. So I'm doing it myself now because what kind of guy would I be, and this is going to be the final keynote in the video, to talk about this and act like I know what's going on and to not attempt to lead by example and provide evidence, quantifiable proof that you can do this. So, like I said, I will be working my butt off to get into better shape. I will reveal that I weighed in at a medical appointment about a month ago at 206 pounds. I'm going to go ahead and assume that I haven't gained or lost a significant amount of weight. It has been a couple of weeks since I was in a position to check on that. But 206, for the next 30 days, not only am I going to be making these videos, but I'm also going to be working a lot harder on my diet. I'm going to be exercising 3 times a week in a 5x5 strong lifts program, and I'll document this stuff in individual videos, probably at the end of each week, rather than talking about it at the end of each, because that's just silly. But I want to be able to come to you guys come May and go, look, not only am I suggesting that you keep your shit together and not let things like the 80-20 dating rule throw you into a pit of hopelessness, that I can come to you and say, you can crawl out, you can be better, and the reason I can say that with such confidence is that I'm doing it myself now. Okay? Don't give up. It gets better. It can be better. I'm rooting for another fucking chart from the Mary Sue to come out in 5 years, that now guys are getting laid 5 times as often, and it'll probably lead to another article, because it's the freaking Mary Sue, saying that this is somehow a terrible thing. Because if there's one thing that I think we all should work on together, it's pissing off some feminists. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. Get ready, because there's going to be a lot more content coming. As I said to cap things off, this is Z. Take care, everybody.